I paid for my mom's dream vacation to thank her for raising me alone. She brought her new family, and I had to share a room with the kids. I left them there. I, a 29-year-old woman, recently received a promotion that came with a substantial raise. To celebrate, I asked my mom, who is 52, if she'd like to join me on a vacation to Greece. My mom has always been my best friend. My father passed away from a terminal illness when I was just a baby, and I have few memories of him. Growing up, it was mainly my mom who cared for me, with occasional help from my grandparents. Life as a single mom was undoubtedly challenging for her, but she never made me feel like a burden. And for that, I am eternally grateful. When I got the promotion, my first thought was to take her on a special trip to thank her for everything she had done. I could have invited my friends, but my mom meant so much to me that I chose her. However, when I invited her, she agreed to come, but with one condition: she wanted to bring her husband, 49, and her stepkids along. My mother had married her current husband 3 years ago, after a long relationship with him. I had no idea my mom was dating this man, and neither did anyone else, including her own parents. She surprised us with the news of their engagement, and before we could even process that, she announced they were already married within 6 months. My stepdad wasn't a bad guy, but for some reason we never clicked. Maybe it was because he and his kids became my mom's primary focus, or perhaps he just never made an effort to bond with me or my grandparents. Whatever the reason, we never really got along, and whenever I visited my mom, we'd mostly avoid each other. He has 2 teenagers from his previous marriage, a 16-year-old daughter and a 14-year-old son. I don't know the details of why his ex-wife left him, but my mom believes she was selfish and uncaring, which led to her losing custody of the kids. She hasn't gone into much detail, and I hadn't asked, as it doesn't really affect me. My stepdad had been married for 6 years and divorced for nearly 2 when he met my mom and decided to be with her. Since my mom seemed so enthusiastic about including her family, I didn't question her decision. I knew booking 4 flight tickets instead of 2 and securing 2 hotel rooms instead of 1 would be more hassle and expense, and I'd likely have less one-on-one time with my mom than I had hoped. But I was okay with that. The trip was meant to make my mom happy and show my gratitude for all she had done for me growing up. After a few days, I agreed to let her bring her family along. Fortunately, I could afford the extra costs comfortably, thanks to my raise. After nearly 2 weeks of planning, we finally boarded our flights and arrived in Athens yesterday afternoon. We were all exhausted and tried to nap in the afternoon. The kids ended up sleeping in my room while my mother and stepdad took the room next to mine. I was surprised that the kids chose my room, as I had expected my mom to share a room with them. I didn't say anything, assuming it was just for convenience and they would move to their room once they woke up. However, even after our naps, they didn't move, but I didn't mind too much since we all went out to explore the local area yesterday. After returning to the hotel, the kids immediately headed to my room. I decided to speak to my mother and stepdad about it. I pulled them aside in the lobby and suggested that it was time for the kids to switch rooms and that they should address it with them. My stepdad laughed and told me that if I wanted to give my mother a vacation, I should have considered that she'd need some babysitting help too. He said this with a chuckle, as if it were a joke. Confused, I asked him to clarify, and he explained that since this trip was meant for my mom to have a break from her exhausting routine, the least I could do was look after the kids and let them stay in my room. They both smiled at me, thanked me, and left me stunned in the lobby. I felt I was already doing more than enough by taking my mom on vacation. How many kids go to such lengths for their parents these days? I was going above and beyond by including her family and covering all the expenses. For them to expect me to babysit their kids too was just absurd. If she needed a break, she should have left them at home and joined me alone, as I had originally planned. After some time, I went to their room to try to reason with them again, but this time my stepdad was much less accommodating. He bluntly told me I had to share the room with the kids because they had earned this break, then slammed the door in my face before I could respond. What was infuriating was that my mom said nothing, even though her husband was being extremely disrespectful and rude. It was maddening that he thought they had earned this break, when in reality it was my promotion and raise that made this trip possible. Instead of showing gratitude, they were blatantly disrespectful. When I returned to my room and saw the kids on the bed beside mine, I decided to try a different approach. I asked them if they'd be willing to move to the other room, hoping they'd agree, but they told me their parents had instructed them to stay in whichever room I was in, so they assumed they'd be sharing with me. I didn't blame them. It wasn't their fault their dad was being a jerk. I left them be and spent the next few hours contemplating what to do next. It wasn't until around 10 p.m. that I realized the kids had fallen asleep. After much thought, I decided the only way to handle the situation was to leave without telling any of them. They had been so disrespectful and selfish, and I wasn't about to let my stepdad boss me around on a vacation I was paying for. Without hesitation, I gathered my bags and made a quick exit. Since I hadn't unpacked yet, it was easy to leave, and the hotel staff didn't mind either. I had informed them that I was checking out and that my mother and stepdad would cover the rooms. It was just past midnight, but after a search, I found another hotel a short distance away. I was fortunate to get an Uber quickly, and within half an hour I checked into a better hotel. Now that I had left my mom and her family behind, I could finally spend the money on myself. I slept well that night, and the first thing I did this morning was book a full-body massage at the hotel spa to relax and truly enjoy the vacation I had worked so hard for after months of pushing myself for the promotion. I had already blocked my stepdad and mother the night before, so I wasn't worried about hearing from them, and there was no way they could track me down. I was enjoying my time immensely until a couple of hours ago when at lunch I received a message from my mother. She had created a fake Instagram account to contact me and accused me of being cruel, particularly to her. She claimed that abandoning my family was wrong and that if I had been so upset by the previous night's events, I should have waited until morning to discuss it with them as a family to reach a mutual agreement. Instead, she said I had chosen to abandon them in a foreign country, knowing they had no money since their cards weren't working internationally. The hotel staff was already pressuring them for payment because they had planned to check out once they realized I had left in the middle of the night without any explanation. Essentially, they were left without funds and risked being kicked out of the hotel unless they could confirm payment, as I had transferred the room charges to them before I left. I knew things were going to go downhill fast, and I couldn't be held responsible for what happened next. My mother told me she was incredibly disappointed and hadn't expected such juvenile and immature behavior from me. She demanded I return immediately to sort things out and bail them out. Her sense of entitlement really angered me, and in the heat of the moment, I replied that she was an adult and could handle it herself, urging her to ask her husband for help since he was now her go-to for everything. That response only fueled her anger. She then told me she wished she had never agreed to come on this vacation and accused me of being jealous of her new life and family, suggesting that I was deliberately causing trouble for them. I don't think this situation is my fault at all. My reaction was probably how any sane person would respond under these circumstances. I'm not jealous, I'm just disappointed that she's not prioritizing her own flesh and blood. But that's okay, I'm an adult now. What I can't tolerate is being disrespected by people who are relying on me, especially when my mother doesn't stand up for me against her husband's rudeness. I don't feel guilty about leaving my mother and her family in a different country because my stepdad tried to force me to share a room with my step-siblings on a vacation that I paid for. Update 1. Hey guys, I didn't apologize to my mother, nor did I reach out to her after reading the comments here. I don't owe her as much as I once thought, and the fact that I offered to take her on vacation should have been enough for her to appreciate my efforts. She really took things too far. Not only did she insist on bringing her family along, but she also expected me to give up my personal space and privacy to accommodate her stepkids. I don't understand why she thought I should sit down and discuss things like a family when they aren't even my family. Her husband is her husband, not my dad, and her kids are her stepkids, not my siblings. I don't owe them any discussions or compromises. I left because they were incredibly disrespectful to me, despite the fact that I had organized the vacation for all of us. The least they could have done was show some gratitude and respect, but they didn't, and I don't see anything wrong with my decision. The only mistake I made was letting my mother convince me to bring her family along. They're not my family, and I shouldn't have let her dictate how I enjoyed the trip. I wanted to repay her for being a good mother, which is why I allowed myself to be pushed around, but her entitlement is inexcusable, in my opinion. It's been a whole day, and I haven't responded to her. She keeps texting intermittently, but I haven't bothered to check her messages, nor have I blocked her. She'll just create another account to contact me, so I've muted her and won't be bothered. Now I'm enjoying my trip solo. Update 2. Lol, my mom just showed up at the hotel I'm staying at with the rest of her family and threw a tantrum in the lobby when they wouldn't let her up to see me or even disclose my room number, which is just standard hotel policy. I don't know why she was surprised, but anyway, when I went down to see what was going on, she was furious and dragged me aside to yell at me for what I'd done. Apparently, they somehow managed to check out of the previous hotel by coordinating with their bank and paying them off, but now they wanted an explanation from me as to why I'd abandoned them. I didn't think I owed them any explanation, but I told her exactly why I left. Her husband's face grew more and more sour as I spoke. He looked like he was about to explode with annoyance, but I didn't care. It was his own fault that they were in this mess. If he had just been nice and polite to me, I wouldn't have left at all. It was pointless for them to make faces at me to try and guilt-trip me, and it was equally pointless for my mother to lecture me about family values and morals. She told me what I'd done was unacceptable, and my way of handling the situation was humiliating for them, making me look like a coward too afraid to talk to my own family. I was already furious, and when she brought up the family thing again, I had a bit of an outburst. I told her we weren't a family because she had lied to us and kept her so-called family hidden for so long, only revealing it when she was about to get married. Additionally, neither she nor her husband had ever made any effort to make me feel like part of their family. It was incredibly entitled of them to expect me to treat them as such. She should have been grateful that I even offered to take them on vacation for her sake. If she was too blind and entitled to appreciate that, then so be it. I told her to her face that I didn't owe her anything, and I wanted them to leave me alone for the rest of the vacation. She tried to demand that I book their flight tickets back home, but I refused. As I had already said, I had done what I promised. If they couldn't appreciate that, I wasn't going to go out of my way to help them. They were adults, they had their own money, and if they were going to take me for granted, they could forget about my offer. There was some more arguing after that, but my stepdad finally intervened and took them away, giving me the nastiest looks he could muster, as if I cared. A couple of hours have passed since then, and now I'm heading out for dinner with a friend who lives here and reached out to me when she heard I was visiting. I hope my mom and her family will just go back home and let me enjoy the rest of this trip on my own because I really have no interest in continuing this unnecessary fight. Update 3. So it turns out I was wrong about my mother letting go of this as easily as I thought. 2 days ago, after our big argument, I figured I'd seen the last of her since I'd made it clear that I didn't owe her anything. But clearly that wasn't the case. Today, just as I was about to head out to explore the city on my own, I got a call from reception saying my mother was back to see me. This time it was just her, so I decided to meet with her because I wanted to put an end to this tiff and enjoy the rest of my vacation. I didn't know what to expect when I met her in the lobby, but she looked more upset than angry, so I figured she wouldn't be as awful as the last time she showed up. She started by apologizing for losing her temper and acting entitled, saying she hadn't realized she was behaving that way. She also told me that she and her husband had been looking forward to a break from the household responsibilities, the kids, and the finances because they had been going through a very tense and rough patch before I invited her on the vacation. She thought this trip could be an opportunity to build lasting bonds between all of us because she loved us all equally and wanted us to be part of each other's lives. However, she wasn't sure if that was the right approach anymore because clearly I don't get along with her husband, and he doesn't seem to like me either. They had a very nasty fight over what had happened after they left the hotel the other day. He accused her of raising me terribly and crossed a line by saying that his ex-wife had been a better mother than she had, which is saying something considering his ex-wife would often leave his kids home alone for hours while she went out. That's why they got divorced. He finally found out what she had been doing, and at the time, the kids were too young to be left alone in a locked room, even for just 3 or 4 hours. For him to compare my mother to a woman like that, just because I decided to stand up for myself, was way over the line. I don't think anyone would have tolerated that. But my mother says she loves him, so she's okay with that. The reason she visited me today was to tell me that they were flying back home the next day and to apologize for her behavior. She'd been really stressed about her relationship with her husband, which had already put her on edge, and what I did just made things worse. So she apologized for that, but also told me she wanted me to keep my distance for a while, meaning I couldn't call her regularly to talk about life like I used to. I wasn't planning on calling her while on vacation anyway, but knowing that I won't be able to have the same relationship with her for the foreseeable future kind of stung. And all because of her husband. It sucked, but I told her I understood, and we had a really awkward, cold hug. Honestly, I wish she hadn't contacted me at all or bothered to apologize because it just made me feel worse about everything. I know she messed up, but she's still my mom, and she was my best friend growing up. Losing her to this new family felt like losing the only part of my childhood I still held on to. It hurts, but there's not much I can do, and honestly, there's nothing I'd even want to do given the circumstances. She's the one who chose her husband and stepkids over me, so really, what can I do? I'll just try to enjoy the rest of my stay here because I'm paying a lot to stay at this expensive hotel. So that's that. Update 4. Hi, I came back home about 3 days ago and am supposed to resume work tomorrow. I tried to make the best of my trip, and it was quite fun. I almost forgot about the situation with my mother until last night when I heard from my grandparents that she decided to leave her husband. They were going through a rough patch anyway, and they realized they couldn't work things out anymore. So the family she put me second to is no longer hers, which feels a little strange and sad to think about because she chose them over me, but now she doesn't even have them anymore. We haven't spoken since she left me at the hotel that last day she visited, and I haven't tried to reach out to her either because it seemed pointless. After a while, I forgot about her because I was having fun on the trip. Even after coming back, I didn't think about her much and she didn't talk to me, so I didn't try to talk to her either. I didn't want to force my presence where I wasn't wanted, and she made it very clear that she didn't want to talk to me at the moment. Maybe she won't change her mind in the future, given the current situation. She didn't even tell me she decided to file for divorce, which is pretty significant. I think this is pretty much the end of the road for my mother and me, and even if we hypothetically reconcile someday, things will never be the way they used to be. I'm okay with that now because I was a good daughter to her, and I tried my best until I felt I couldn't anymore. So I'm cool with whatever happens now, and I wish the best for her because I'm too old to hold grudges against anyone, let alone my own mom. I'll try to move past this as well now, I guess.